Ladies, be honest with me. Have you ever attacked your husband in an argument or in a matter of conflict and seen that it just did not end well? I can almost hear you say, yes, sis, I have done that. So if that is you, let's talk about what you can do instead. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Krupa and I create faith-based content here on YouTube, and I post every single Thursday, minus last week that didn't happen because it has been busy up in this gaff, okay? But yeah, we usually upload every single Thursday, so do feel free to subscribe if that sounds like something you'd be interested in. Do you know what? I've always kind of just known this of life, that this is how you just deal with conflict. You attack the person that's giving you this situation or this hurt or making you feel a certain type of way, right? So I went into marriage thinking that this is exactly how you deal with it, and so when it came to conflict resolution, I was always attacking my husband, always attacking him, like he was the problem. It never ended well. Like it was always that he would shut off or that he wouldn't know how to respond because now suddenly he's a problem and he doesn't know how to fix the problem because the problem is his entire existence. Do you know what I mean? And so it's just not helpful. And so I quickly learned that in order for me to have constructive conflict resolution situations in my marriage, I needed to see the problem as the problem itself, to almost make the problem abstract from us. In my line of work, I get to speak to loads of amazing people. And so one of the guys that I spoke to last, or maybe like 2 weeks ago, he was basically saying that he's been married for 28 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is the secret, right? And he basically said that he and his wife treat every problem with the verbiage of balloon. So he was like, quite literally, we'll be like, I have a balloon to pick with you, like I have a balloon to pop with you. And so I was like, I love that. And I was like, that's such a YouTube video, because it's something that I had to learn, but not quite the same verbiage as the balloon, but the same concept, right? In terms of like having constructive discussions, etc. And something that really changed my view of how I do conflict resolution is by this one discussion that Leslie and I had, and he was like, whatever you've done with that decision, or whatever you've done with that communication or conversation that we've just had, whatever you've done, reverse engineer that and do it again anytime we have any problems arise in the future. And at the time I was like, I don't quite know what I've done. I feel like I've done the same thing that I've always done. But on hindsight, I could see that it was the idea of like actually seeing the problem as a problem in itself and not attaching it to my husband's existence, basically. So let's talk about how to do conflict resolution very, very well. So the base scripture that I want us to focus on for this video is found in Proverbs 18 verse 2, and it says, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his or her opinion. And this felt like me for so long, like in the space of feeling those heightened emotions, I was hardly thinking about it being constructive. Let me not lie. I was like, listen, your girl is feeling upset. It seems like you're the issue, so we're gonna attack you because your existence is the issue here. And then I had to realize that actually no, I'm approaching this with very little understanding and just concentrating on expressing how I feel, which is never constructive if I don't have understanding to back it. So that brings me to my first point. Number one is always get understanding, sis. Understanding is crucial because you might see a problem, and yes, it might be heavily attached to your husband, but your husband is not the issue, right? And so for you to understand that, for you to disconnect those two from being connected, is by getting understanding. Actually understand what is it that you're upset about. For example, I remember one of the issues was that I was at work and doing a job that I really disliked. Like it was really heavy on me emotionally. I was so ready to leave, but I couldn't leave. I just felt like the Lord was not calling me to leave, but my emotions and my flesh wanted to leave, right? Because it was so difficult. One of the things I remember getting really upset about is that we weren't doing date nights often enough, and we were doing date nights once a week, but for me I was like, no, I need twice a week. And he was like, how was he to know that I need an increased amount of date nights, right? And on hindsight, I could see that if I had understood why having more date nights was important to me, I could have gone into conflict resolution with a bit more understanding, so that he had a little bit more grounds to kind of work with, right? Having understanding means that you're able to go deeper into the issue and not stay at the shallow end. Staying in the shallow end of the issue, of the problem, means that you're going to get shallow conclusions, you're going to get shallow solutions, and that's not really going to solve anything, right? It's going to just put the band-aid over the issue. Whereas what you really want to do is heal the issue. You want to heal the wound, so to speak. And so in order for you to do that is that you need to unravel the bandage. So you need to really see this problem and see why it's an issue. For example, it might be that date night situation where you feel like you might need a few more date nights with your husband in a month perhaps. And maybe the deeper root of that is not that you just want date nights and you want to go out, but you feel like you want to connect with him again. Maybe you're feeling a lack of that connection, or maybe you're going through so much and maybe you feel like that connection or that additional connection with your husband might fill those voids of what you're going through at the time. Do you know what I mean? Just go deeper so that you can definitely get a deeper solution at the end of your conflict resolution, as opposed to staying by the shallow end and feeling like I didn't actually get a solution from our conversation because nothing got deep about it. There was no understanding surrounding that. Does that make sense? Because otherwise you're just expressing emotions, which is absolutely fine, but to do that with some understanding might help the person that you're speaking to understand you better, which means that you're in a better position, both of you guys collectively, to come to some kind of conclusion. So that would be number one. Number two is my favorite. I love deciphering what the fear is behind things. So number two is identify the fear. Sis, almost always, any problem I've had, like up until this point of my life, there's always been a fear attached to it. And it doesn't have to be like this huge fear or irrational, rational fear, like none of that. They just identify the problem first and foremost, get a little bit deeper into the problem and see why you feel that way, but then see where the fear is. The date night situation, you might fear that like, okay, I'm losing that connection, that momentum with my husband. I fear that maybe work is going to get too much, which means that our marriage might give way, and I don't want that, so I fear that. So always identify the fear. Again, it gives the person that you're talking to more grounds to work with, more grounds to understand you with, so that you're not the issue, he's not the issue, but the issue remains the issue. Does that make sense? Because it can so easily be that you just end up attacking each other, which is obviously never constructive. Take it from a sister that's been there several times already. So yeah, I feel like identifying your fear is, again, going that extra layer deeper into the situation so that conflict resolution has good grounds to work with. And actually you'll find, I mean, I found that like having the fear attached to my discussion, say, look, I've identified that this is the real root of the issue, that I fear X, Y, and Z that will happen. It gives him the joy of bringing a solution, because he's like, no, I don't want you to fear this, so here's the solution. Why don't we do this, or why don't we do that? And we're able to get creative with one another, because now we're working as a team towards the same goal, as opposed to the goal being eradicating his existence. Like, do you know what I mean? Now, number 3 is where it gets fun, okay, because now you're going to identify the root of that fear. Now this is so amazing, because you'll see the absolute change in tones, in just the trajectory of your conversation, because now this gives context to everything that you've brought to the conversation thus far. What is the root of that fear? So for example, for date nights, it might be that, look, I want us to do a few more date nights in a month, because I fear that our marriage might lose its connection and its spark, and I don't want that, because growing up I saw that happen to my parents, and that was the worst thing that I've seen them encounter, and I don't want that to happen to us. Do you see the difference in that conversation? Rather than saying, oh, I just feel like we don't do date nights, I feel like you don't care anymore, I feel like you're not putting any effort into our marriage, versus, look, I feel like we need to do a few more date nights in a month because I fear that we're losing that connection in our marriage, and I don't want to see us go through that because I saw my parents go through that, and that was the worst thing growing up. Do you see the difference in that conversation? Do you see that the partner will actually find joy to make the date nights happen? Because sis, he doesn't want you to relive that trauma. Like, come on. Context and understanding is everything in a marriage. That is what I've learned in my just 5 years of marriage, right? So yeah, identifying the root of it. Almost always the fear is attached to something that you might have seen growing up, some trauma, some hurt, some past lived moments that you just don't want them to repeat again. Just attached to some kind of context, to some kind of root. That fear isn't just coming from the air, right? The fear is coming from somewhere. And so it's your job and duty to bring the issue with its identified fear, with its identified roots to your partner, so that you both can tackle this balloon, so to speak, or this problem, so to speak, with the right momentum, with the right energy, with the right drive, with the right passions, so that none of you guys are feeling unheard or attacked, but both of you guys are seeing the issue for what it is, as opposed to seeing and identifying the issue as one's existence or character, or like a personal attack situation. I feel like I just don't need to explain it anymore. I feel like it's self-explanatory in so many ways. Like, it just makes sense, right, to do it this way, as opposed to just being like bleh and expressing your opinions and being like, oops, that wasn't very constructive, I might need to try that again next month, you know? Now, I get it, in the heat of the moment it's really hard to go into depths about these things. And it might be that if you are an internal processor, you might just need to take some time away, do some journaling, some praying, however you do your processing, and then go and choose the right time. But I get it, in marriage, sometimes you don't get that chance, that timing, right? It might be that you approach your husband and say, look, I want to identify this problem, and currently I'm seeing that you're the issue, and I don't want it to be that way. So can you help me externally process this? And so now you'll be like, look, I want to identify where this is coming from before we actually get to the solution. So here is the issue. I don't feel like we're doing date nights enough, and I feel like you're not putting in effort, but I don't want it to be an attack to you. So let's identify a little bit more together, if that's okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're already approaching that very, very differently. So that will be it from me. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you're taking away a little nugget or 2 or 3 in our case. And if you are, do let me know. If you're already doing this as well, do let me know what you implement in your problem tackling conversations. So I hope that you enjoyed it. I will see you in the comment section down below, but I will also see you in the next video. Bye.